The holidays start here at Kroger with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. You could do a classic herb-roasted turkey or spice it up and make turkey tacos. Serve up a go-to shrimp cocktail or use Simple Truth wild-caught shrimp for your first Cajun risotto. Make creamy mac and cheese or a spinach artichoke fondue from our selection of Murray's cheese. No matter how you shop, Kroger has all the freshest ingredients to embrace all your holiday traditions. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Saturday, Christmas comes early.
Unbelievable! Welcome to this incredible scene.
Bills.
To the end zone!
Chargers.
It's a touchdown!
An exclusive NFL game.
That's fantastic!
Live in primetime.
Wow!
Only on Peacock.
With a Christmas gift to their fans.
They're having some fun now.
Bills versus Chargers. Saturday, 7:30 Eastern. Exclusively on Peacock.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to the Mindfield podcast from Anfield Index Pro. I am your host, Alan O'Donoghue, and as always, I am joined by my partner in crime, Dr. Andrew Vincent. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Although you just told me you just seconds before we went live, Al dropped the starting question and the topic for the pod on me, so I'm in the process of thinking about my answer. Yeah. I got a 30-second head start.
Listeners, Andrew always has it easy. He gets time to prep and, come up with the wonderful ideas that he brings to the table. So this session, I said, let's just throw a spanner in the works. I
think we closed that last time with your talking about how miserable it is to interact with me every other week for about half an hour. And so you decided to start by.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
It's like when the relationship goes
stale. Trying to throw me off my game.
Yeah, the relationship goes stale and we start to dress up and try and make it a bit more interesting again, just to do something a little bit different.
Yeah, well, you know what? You won't throw me off.
The question. Are the mentality monsters back?
No.
Thanks very much, listeners. That was a great podcast. Right. What makes you say that, Andrew?
I think it's been really impressive how we've worked our way out of bad spots. But I think if we look at this Liverpool group and we would really call them the mentality monsters, we weren't getting in those bad spots that much to begin with. And when we did, we worked our way out of it. But I don't think the consistency is there from this group at this time. I don't think the overall process is solidified enough that the focus and identity is consistent. And so I think it shows a lot of resilience. And even if you maybe think about the early Klopp teams, right, or the stages of his first iteration, Klopp 1.0, there was a period of time where we played a lot of exciting games. where we got ourselves in tough spots and kind of worked our way out, or there were just back and forth games. And yes, that takes a certain mental skill set, but if you're talking about an elite mentality, the consistency and control to not let yourself get there at all is a part of that. And so when you think of maybe, the Norwich game, right? That was the one where Lallana jumped on Klopp's back and broke his glasses. That was good fun. That was a different version of Klopp, a more carefree version of Klopp. He doesn't wear glasses now, so you couldn't even break them if you wanted to. But maybe the Fulham game is our equivalent to that this year. Where it's just kind of mayhem, and we come out on the right side of it, and that is really fun and entertaining, and we take a lot of momentum from that and energy from that, but also we shouldn't have been there in the first place. And compare that to the title-winning season, where there were games that were not super interesting because we just controlled the game so well, got through on a 2-0 or even a 1-0 where we weren't challenged that much. That's what elite mentality looks like. And so I would say we're not monsters yet.
Or ogres or trolls or something maybe instead.
Mentality ogres. I like that.
But it's interesting you say that, because, and one of the words that really jumped out at me was identity. And for me, when I look at this team, the difference with, say, the Klopp 1.0 is that we didn't have world-class players, the amount of world-class players that we have now. So I think the performance levels are, for them as players, are not to the heights that they would expect of themselves, which allows a certain chink in the armour or fragility in the mindset. And I also think that maybe we're getting away with it now because our players are just better than they were last season. Our main players are better. I think there's definitely still a huge lack of really experiencing the new identity, like feeling it in your bones. They're still trying to figure it out. There's still a bit of round peg in square holes, and I think that they won't feel like they're doing necessarily a good enough job. But the caveat to that is that the title-winning season was remarkable in terms of the level that we showed up until we had the league wrapped up. And that was backed with the levels we had shown the previous season and the season after, I can't remember, but anyway, where we were getting 90 plus points and not winning the league. I think this season, how we're doing is what a regular football mentality monster is doing outside of the last 10 years in football, because generally this is how seasons would go for teams winning the league. They wouldn't streak ahead. They wouldn't be miles and miles ahead. They wouldn't be getting 90 plus points. They'd be winning the league with low 80s. And that was the norm for 100 years nearly. And I think what's happened is that the last 10 years, and especially with City coming along and being the behemoth that they've been, that's distorted what we've seen as elite levels of achievement.
Mm-hmm. So you were saying, yes, we are mentality monsters at the moment.
I think we are a version of mentality monsters, but we're not the version that we were when we won the title, or the seasons around that when we were hitting 90 odd points, late 80s.
Yeah. Interesting. I think I looked through the squad and I would say, who would say they've been at their best consistently enough this season? I think you'd say definitely Ali. Mm-hmm. I think you would say Virgil probably has to feel pretty good about what he's done. I think Mo's been really consistent, but he's had some games where he's disappeared a little bit. Like, I don't know what he would say. I think if he said yes, I'll trust him and give him a pass. I think Trent has had a lot of big moments and, maybe would say like he's really happy with his performance across the season. I got to be honest, I don't understand the role that he is being asked to play well enough to be able to evaluate whether or not I think he's playing it well. He's been a lot of fun this year, and I assume he's doing what he's supposed to, but I don't really know. I think outside of that, everyone's been fairly inconsistent, and like Szoboszlai had a great start. Maybe the past 3-4 weeks have been 50-50. I think like Darwin's had big moments, but also, and like is growing, but like, I don't think you could say that he's at the level of consistency that he would want to be at. Obviously Diaz is, had extenuating circumstances, but I don't think he's been at his best for a little bit. I think Gakpo's been 50-50 and a little all over the place. McAllister's been pretty consistent, but also has had a couple stinkers. Gravenberch is all over the map in terms of his consistency. He's been a world beater a couple of times and an us beater looking a couple times like he was going to cost us big time. I think Elliott's been pretty consistently good, but mostly come off the bench and hasn't established himself regularly. I think Gomez has had some 50-50 games. So I think you look through the squad and it's like there's just too many people who aren't at their best to say that mentally we're totally dialed in.
Okay. I'll counter that with, is it realistic to expect a professional athlete to be at their best all the time?
Probably not realistic for them to be at their best all of the time, but I think that's what I work with people on. Like that's the goal that we have. And like, there's an understanding, like you're going to have games throughout the season where you don't make the impact you want to make. And maybe patches where you don't make the impact you want to make. But I think the idea, like one of the whole points of sports psychology is how do you get the best out of yourself more regularly? How do you find that consistency? How do you get yourself into that space? Like there's a huge part of consistency that's mental. Part of it's physical, part of it's contextual, right? So there's going to be certain games where it just doesn't click for you or register for you, like the way the other team is playing or the way the situation is that day. It's just not possible for you to make the impact that you want to make. But I think levels of consistency beyond what we're seeing would be important. I think, what I would often look for is what's your process? What's your personal identity? What are the 2 or 3 things that you're doing consistently that impact a game? And are you giving yourself the chance to execute on those? Are you having opportunities from those? Like, are those things happening and just not being successful? Like, I think identity is so important for how I think about the mental side of the game, is really knowing what are the things that I do out there and am I doing them? And I think there's times maybe Darwin is someone and Diaz is someone too, who I think about what they're like at their best. I think when Diaz isn't at his best, it's like he just looks a little lost in terms of those things. Like he's not taking on the dribbles from out wide. He's not running at people. I think like defensively, like he throws in these kind of really nice tackles when he's at his best. And I think like he gets a little lost on the defensive side when he's not. Darwin is just offsides a lot. So maybe he is like really pushing that part of his game. Like I think, is it realistic to expect everyone to be at their best always? No, but I think you need 4 people on the pitch at their best, 3 people who have found a really solid level of consistency, and then you can afford a couple people being ineffective on a certain day.
And maybe we have that.
I don't think we do, but you could argue it.
Well, we're top of the league.
I would like you to.
Maybe we're the most consistent.
That doesn't, sure. But that doesn't mean our process is refined. Like,
no, and process is different though.
Like
process is different, and we're changing our process, and we have new members of the squad to embed, and for them to find their identity within the group on a group level, on a personal level, and them finding their identity within the overall structure of the team and what's expected of them. And I could imagine sitting down with Darwin Núñez and him saying, I am absolutely working as hard as I have ever worked before. And the numbers show that in the defensive actions, in his pressing, in his work rate, in his assists. He's doing way more that is better for the team overall. And he's just not sticking the ball in the back of the net. Now, yes, that's the primary requirement of Darwin Núñez for us. But if he's spent the last 12 to 18 months or 12 to 14 months getting it drilled into his head, you need to change how you play in order to fit into the structure of the team, and you need to work harder and learn more about the defensive side of the team and your role within that defensive side of the team. Maybe if that's been given to him as the most important thing for you to focus on, well, maybe it's not unreasonable for there to be a dip elsewhere. And if we're comparing him to, say, Mo Salah, who for the last 7 years has, he's just got it. And people say he's just a better footballer. And that probably is the case. But Mo Salah is one of the greatest footballers to have ever played the game in the history of football. He is easily in the top 50 to 100 players, I would suggest, to have ever played the game anywhere in the world. So maybe Darwin Núñez just isn't that person. And maybe the players we have right now aren't those people, but maybe Ali and Virgil and Dom and Salah are consistent enough to be those 4 people per game who are being the best that they can be. Now, I'm not saying that I agree with what I'm saying. I'm just playing devil's advocate in terms of how distorted football has become.
Has football become distorted, or through various approaches to trying to elevate performance, have we recognized that there's a level beyond what we thought was possible in the past?
But that's a distortion.
I think no, or it's a new normal. It's a change, but not a distortion. Like that would, like people running a mile in under 4 minutes was thought impossible at one point. The fact that people can run a mile in under 4 minutes now doesn't make that a distortion, right? It's a new level that's been found in terms of what's possible for people to accomplish. And, I would wonder, what we've seen is that it's possible for teams to accomplish super high 90-point levels of performance over the course of several seasons. Maybe that's a distortion because Liverpool and City just have had teams that were very good at a time where the rest of the league was not very good. Maybe it's a COVID-related distortion. Maybe it's like that. That's fair, right? And we'll see. Like if things go back to not being the case, then okay, it turns out that that's a bit of a distortion or is a contextual thing. But I do think it's possible. Like we've seen that it can happen. So let's shoot for it. That would be my goal. Like if I were working with Liverpool right now, I would not feel like, hey, job done on the mental side of the game. Like this team is clicking. There is nothing for me to add at the moment. It would feel like there is more for me to add. And that to me is like a mentality monster. If the team is a mentality monster, then as a sports psychologist, I should be able to go to my nice office, kick my feet up, look out the window, and not worry at all. Like, not necessarily feel like there's anything coming my way. I think with this group right now, consistency would be on my mind, or certain parts of the process would be on my mind. I don't think this is a group that runs itself yet, that fully regulates itself yet. I don't think the newer leadership structure has like fully taken shape. Like, I don't think the individuals in the team are quite consistent enough yet. I can't speak to what I would do individually to improve that, because I think so much of it comes down to like the work you're doing with a given player, which depends so much on how they feel about their performance, how they're picturing, how they're thinking about it, what the coach's input is. There's all these variables that like I obviously don't have access to. So it's like, you're right. Like, I could talk to Darwin. He could be like, I feel really good about where I am, because even though the goal scoring part of my game hasn't quite been there so far, there's this other part of the game I'm actually focusing on, and that part's been really good. And in that case, like, cool, great. Like, that's just me not knowing what I'm talking about, and I'm happy enough to be like wrong. If someone feels better about their game than I think their game looks, like, they're a better judge than me. That's something I say to everyone I work with. Like, you are the expert on yourself and your game. So if someone comes to me and they're like, I really like how I'm playing, unless all of the feedback around them is telling them something different, such that I think they have a distorted view of themselves, then I'm going to say, great, build on that, but yeah, I think this group in particular, there's just so much room for improvement.
I agree. I do agree. I think there is tons of room for improvement. I'm going to be curious to see how this season plays out. Do we follow our normal trajectory of having a rough January and rough February, and then a storming March, April, and May, and where that will leave us? But I think, like, the term mentality monsters is almost impossible to quantify in real terms, but I wonder, does the success that the core of the team have had allow them to feel a sense of confidence that we can drag this over the line and we can bring these lads with us, when probably nobody expected them to be challenging for a title this season?
I think it's a really big test of the new leadership group that I would say probably forms like the core of the team that you're mentioning. Mm-hmm. Because in some ways, like, who's kicking around who really has had success? Just Mo, Trent, Robbo, Virgil, Matip, Gomez, Ali. Was Avi around for the title-winning season?
Probably not. Quivine was there. Adrian was there.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Jota wasn't, but Jota's got to Champions League final, hasn't he?
I think so. So that's a solid chunk, right? That's a nice group of experience, but you're also then looking at a lot of important players who haven't actually experienced that success yet. So it's a good test of, can that group of players we just mentioned help the players who haven't experienced the success yet understand what it means to get this over the line in the second half of the season? And is the identity instilled enough, or is the resilience good enough? Because that's what this group does have. Is like, absolutely, will not argue for a second, this group has zero quit, has a ton of resilience, and they will keep fighting to the end and find ways to win games. And so, like, you can afford to be less consistent if you are so resilient. It's not the preferential way of winning probably, but like, you can afford to not be going out and controlling games across the board if you can just be so resilient, but you push your luck at some point with that. And maybe we could just be really lucky. That would be fine too. Sometimes that's enough to win you a title. I think that's a really interesting thing. And I think if this group, it's a huge opportunity for this leadership group to cement themselves as a really legitimate leadership group. They can learn a lot here and cement a real hierarchy here if they can help the new players figure out, how do we do this? That would make a huge difference just for the long-term trajectory, because I think then, what's a good way to put this? It gives them so much credibility. I think they have the credibility anyways, but this season becomes a workshop for them.
Yeah.
Tired of ads interrupting your favorite show? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Download the Amazon Music app or visit amazon.com/ad-free sports. That's amazon.com/ad-free sports to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime members. Some shows may have ads.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
That's pretty vague, but that's the best I've got right at the moment.
Yeah, but it gives them the chance to try things out and try and instill that structure as best as they can. And I think there's probably because of the success levels that there's probably enough trust from the management team to, trust that Virgil and Mo and Trent and Ali and Robbo can take that mantle. And it's not just one voice. It's not just one or two voices that are the loudest ones, and everyone has to, I suppose, bow down to that. But I suppose as we're talking, what's coming to me as well is, though, how much we evaluate the success or failure of leadership groups, mentality, based on results, based on what happens and how that can kind of flip. Like I think we've got 18 points from losing positions this season, and our total is 37, I think we're on. So almost pretty much half of our points have come from losing positions. And that could be the difference maker for those who have had an experienced success versus those who haven't. Because those who haven't might be going, Jesus, we are so lucky to be where we are. And those who've experienced that success go, no, this is how we do it. That we never give up, and we can absolutely keep going to the end. And like we mentioned the last time, that does instill not a fear necessarily, but a question in opposition's heads. We can't afford to switch off against them, which sets up the conditions. So if you've got your group who believe they can keep going and can score right till the very last second, and you have the opposition going and believing or thinking about the exact same thing, that is creating those conditions. And the more we do it, the more that builds. It's just not easy to watch.
It is fun to watch when you win in the end.
Yeah.
It's fun. You're right. There's the narrative and script that develops. So from like a narrative psychology, narrative therapy perspective, this idea of this is who we are, we never quit, and eventually we pull it out. Having had the successful experiences means that narrative becomes, we might struggle, but we always have a chance. And that changes what it feels like to be in the end of a game, sometimes for both teams, but especially for one. For us, it's like, we can still do this. And maybe if that becomes enough of a habit, other teams pick up on that and react to it too. Whereas, in our worst moments last year, it felt like the narrative was, we're not going to figure this out. There were points there where it was so frustrating to watch, where it just felt like this isn't going to happen. This is one of these games again. There's definitely a new narrative around this group, and being in first right now helps that. No doubt, right? Because then you look at it and you're like, wow, this must be working. Results do matter. Again, it's interesting because I talk all the time about process versus results, like both of us do. And we highlight how important process is. And I think actually one of the hardest things to do from a mental standpoint is probably to be a team like Bournemouth and to know that even when your process is spot on, you might only win half your games, because you're not going to have the same reinforcement that you get as someone who is, if we're at the tip of our process, we're going to win 90% of the time. And so that gets reinforced in this totally different way. Like, you might have games where you're doing everything you're supposed to and it's not working. And so it doesn't feel good. And then you lose the game and there's this instinct to look and be like, well, what were we doing wrong? It's really hard to look at a situation where you've lost, but maybe recognize we didn't really do anything wrong, or like, this was actually a good game and we need to take this and move forward. And especially if that's a regular occurrence. Like, I think with top teams, maybe every once in a while, you might have a game where it's like, look, we played really well. Our process was really good. We created the chances we wanted to create. They just didn't go in. Things didn't fall for us. We can move on from that knowing we played well and the result didn't go our way. That's sometimes how it goes. It's different if maybe you expect that a certain amount of the time. You can do your best and it's still not going to be enough to get you over the line in certain games. I got us on a little bit of a deviation here, the results do matter, and getting some of the outcomes matters a lot because it creates that reinforcement, feeling like you accomplished something. So this is just like a pure behavioral perspective. And like people, like a behavioral perspective is like the reward and punishment. Like it's if you do the thing you want, you get a treat. If you do the thing we don't want, then you get zapped, is usually how it works in experiments in psychology, or used to work before ethics and whatnot. So that plays a really important role. I was listening to this neuroscientist, a podcast he did, Andrew Huberman. He's like he does a podcast where he looks at neuroscience studies and kind of puts together interesting suggestions for people based on what the research says. And he was talking about this experiment where they had, I don't know if the rats were fighting or if they were in some sort of competition, probably mazes, because that's another thing. Usually rats do mazes in psychology. But either way, the rats knew whether or not they were winning. The biggest predictor of future wins was previous wins. Part of that was based on just resilience, but what the researchers had shown was that for rats who already had an experience of winning, their effort was greater than the effort put in. The number of times they would keep trying was greater than the rats who had only experienced losing. And the reason for that is if you don't have the experience of something going well and being reinforced, then you don't have the same belief that if I try again, it's likely to work out. And so with behaviorism too, there's this whole thing, reinforcement schedules. And so like sometimes the way this is talked about is like gambling is a really addictive behavior because the winning is random. And so like if I If I know that I'm supposed to win every 5th time, and now 20 times have gone by and I don't win, I'm going to give up on that because it's not working the way it's supposed to. It's easy for me to walk away. If I know I might win randomly 1 out of 5 times and 20 goes by, some part of me might think, well, it's just been a bad run. I'm probably going to hit the next one. This next one's going to come, or I'm going to hit a good run, or I win 3 in a row and then I go 30 without a win. And so it's like the way that plays with our brain is these random reinforcement schedules make us keep trying, keep pushing until like it takes longer to realize that this isn't working, or to give up, or to conceptualize that this isn't working. And so the way that this comes back to soccer, Al, is that results do matter a lot, because if you never get that reinforcement, at the end of the day, winning feels good and losing feels bad. And unless you can find a way to make a loss feel good, which is really hard because you're talking about really competitive people, it takes a lot of mental effort actually to have a loss and then say that was good and that feels good. And like I did things right, and reinforce the things you did right when you don't have a positive feeling. It's how our brain works. It's the dopamine, the joy, all those positive feelings we feel, that sends a message, a neurochemical message within our brain. Hey, let's do this again. And so now, yeah, like coming back to actually Liverpool too, is like we have this experience of coming back and winning on a really regular basis. And that sticks with us now. If you don't have the results, that effort isn't reinforced. There's not that part of your brain that holds on to that and thinks we can do it. And it's not even this conscious. It's not that cognitive. It's just this happens at this unconscious level of just like your brain is expecting this reward. It's almost like that thing you find yourself doing where all of a sudden you're like, oh, why am I doing this? Like where you didn't really think about it, but your brain is kind of, it's scrolling through YouTube or scrolling through Instagram or scrolling through whatever you scroll through. Like every once in a while, there's that dopamine hit that your brain is looking for. And it's like, then you might scroll through for a long time and it's like, okay, well, this isn't really there. But then you hit another one. It's why phones are so addictive. It's an intermittent reinforcement schedule. And yeah, we've been reinforced a lot so far this season. And so that effort will continue. And that's really what I'm saying. You guys have gotten into the weeds of behaviorism.
Yeah, the easiest way I use to describe it is when you have to get up and go to the toilet during the night. Isn't it amazing how you don't bump into anything most of the time? It's that neural pathway. You don't think about it. You just know where to go so you don't bump into the corners of the bed or the chest of drawers. You can just get there and then you get your reward. And then you get back into bed absolutely fine.
Technically, it's a negative reinforcement, which means the removal of something uncomfortable is a reinforcement pattern. And so like when you have the discomfort of having to use the bathroom and then you use the bathroom and you have alleviated that discomfort of having to pee, or whatever, then that's a negative reinforcement. You've removed something. So even if it's like, you're really bringing it back to soccer, I guess, or whatever, like, at the end of the game, there's that discomfort. That's frustration. There's the frustration all of us felt with Fulham, right? Where like that game was miserable for a solid 20 minutes. Like when that game looked like it had gotten away from us, that was tough feelings, big emotions. So, not only does winning alleviate those and become a negative reinforcement, it also becomes a positive reinforcement because those positive feelings feel good.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that can become really reinforcing, and that's the reason why. But the results matter because otherwise it's hard to find the reinforcement and like the joy, the chemicals that come with joy, like the brain chemistry that comes with joy, assists in developing neural pathways. And so actually I think we talk a lot about deliberate practice too. Mm-hmm. And that's one of those things with deliberate practice. And it's part of why I often say it's so important to celebrate your successes. It's not just about patting yourself on the back or making yourself feel good. Finding a way to have some joy in recognizing what you're doing well is a reminder to your brain that thing matters. And so often when I have an athlete who thinks they're super tough and super hard on themselves, and I'm my own biggest critic, and that's how I'm going to get ahead, the question that I'll ask them is, how would you train a dog with no treats? And if they come up with some other sort of reward, I would say, well, how would you train a dog with no rewards at all? If you could only punish it, how do you think the dog would do? And inevitably, because most people I work with don't enjoy cruelty to animals, they're like, well, that wouldn't work at all. You know, like that wouldn't feel good. I think I said all. I've never worked with someone who was actively enjoying being cruel to animals, actually. Well, that wouldn't work. And it's like, yeah, you'd have a dog at knowing what it's not supposed to do, really good at knowing what's wrong, but not good at being able to know what's right. And when you only have the experience of being punished for what's wrong, often the state that develops is called learned helplessness. And there's this idea that there's nothing that I can do that's going to get me reinforcement. As soon as we put it into language, it feels very cognitive, but it exists at a much deeper neurochemical level too, or biochemical level too. It exists at a much more subconscious level of just when there's no reinforcement, when there's nothing that gives you that joy, which comes with the dopamine, the serotonin, the other adrenaline, whatever, that sends your brain this message of that's good, we should do this again. It's really hard to repeat the process.
Listeners, you can all sit back and revel in the knowledge of Dr. Andrew Vincent. Honestly, Andrew, that was a phenomenal take and a really, really good insight into the brain chemistry and explained in a very clear and concise way. So I know I slag you off sometimes, but you do have your moments where you're actually quite good. And that was one of those moments. Thanks so much for joining us
with joy in order to reinforce it.
Don't ruin my outro now. Don't ruin this whole thing. But listeners, I want to thank you all for your ears and wish you all a very Merry Christmas. And we will see you back in the new year. Andrew, any words for the listeners as we head off into the sunset of Christmas time?
Enjoy your holidays. That's it. Enjoy, because if you enjoy it, it will reinforce enjoying it.
Excellent. There you go. The doctor has spoken. Listeners, until next time, please look after yourselves and take care.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Tired of ads interrupting your favorite show? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Download the Amazon Music app or visit amazon.com/ad-free sports. That's amazon.com/ad-free sports to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime members. Some shows may have ads.